Hello, and welcome to a special edition of AEM News Center, only on the History Channel.
I'm Barbara Watson.
And I'm Peggy Carter.
Tonight, we will be discussing the two most eventful years during the Vietnam era, 1968 to 1969.
The Vietnam era was a time period in American history that occurred during the 60s to early 70s. There were many aspects of this era, and with that, there were plenty of ups and downs.
During this time, the U.S. went through the Vietnam War and new explorations outside of our atmosphere. This was a time of protest.
Tonight, we will be viewing a series of videos and interviews of the occurrences of the era.
We will begin on January 31st, 1968. This date marks the start of the downhill slide for President Johnson and soldiers in Vietnam. This was called the Tet Offensive.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Hudson. Today's March 28, 1968, and the Tet Offensive has finally come to a conclusion within the past few days. This was from the North Vietnamese attacking the South Vietnamese government, army, the National Liberation Front, and the U.S. bases, which started on January 31st. The goal for the Communists was to destroy the South Vietnamese government. The only problem the North had with their plan was that they expected more supporters for the uprising. Despite their lack of numbers, they were able to cause a lot of destruction. They bombarded around 100 different cities in South Vietnam. During the time of the Tet Offensive, many families were observing the Lunar New Year, allowing the North to strike easily and quickly. Personally, I am very surprised over this sudden attack. Contrary to what President Johnson has been telling us, I believe this war will be much harder to fight. It's unbelievable to me that our own president has been keeping secrets about the war. As you can see from the Tet Offensive, we've got a bit of a struggle ahead of us, and Johnson shouldn't suppress the facts, as they will always reach the public, one way or another.
With American sons in the field far away, with America's future under challenge right here at home, with our hopes and the world's hopes for peace and the balance every day, I do not believe that I should devote an hour or a day of my time to any personal partisan causes or to any duties other than the awesome duties of this office, the presidency of your country. Accordingly, I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party for another term as your president.
In November of 1968, there was an electoral race between three Democrats, one American Independent, and one Republican. The Democrats were Eugene McCarthy, Robert F. Kennedy, and Hubert Humphrey. The American Independent was George Wallace, and the Republican was Richard Nixon. There was also going to be another runner for the Democratic Party, Lyndon B. Johnson, who should have easily won the Democratic nomination. However, he pulled himself out of the race because of his declining popularity due to the Tet Offensive. On June 6, 1968, Robert Kennedy was assassinated by Sirhan Sirhan, an Arab nationalist who was against Kennedy's support for Israel. Nixon automatically got the spot for the Republican Party, and Humphrey won the spot for the Democrats. In the end, it boiled down to Wallace, Nixon, and Humphrey. Nixon won 31.8% of the popular vote, Humphrey won 31.3%, and Wallace won 13.5%. Also, Nixon won 301 electoral votes, Humphrey 191, and Wallace won 46 electoral votes. With a close difference in the popular vote results between him and Humphrey, and a very significant difference in the electoral votes, Nixon won the election for president in 1968.
A main factor for this downfall of Johnson was due to the anti-war movement. There were never activists more involved in protesting against the Vietnam War passionately and openly than hippies.
These people were usually white, middle-class people who were often very young and were the counterculture of this exciting era.
They expressed their distaste for the conformity of the United States. They often had communal living and didn't join in normal careers.
Most envisioned hippies with long hair and tie-dye clothing. This is accurate. Many hippies wore unconventional clothes. Women wore long, flowing dresses. Men grew beards. Both wore sandals.
Most were involved in recreational drug use. All in all, these hippies were natural, free-loving, spirited people.
There were 4 important days to the hippies, and these fall on August 15th to 18th, 1969. These days were named the Woodstock Festival.
Oh man, I come down to New York and drove into this dairy farm expecting to see a handful of my people at a music concert. Instead, I come on over and I see 500,000 of my peoples. I got to meet the Grateful Dead, man! That's my favorite band! Woodstock is a place of harmony, okay? It's beautiful. Communion with nature.
Well, I know my facts, man. You see, these 4 people, John Roberts, Joel Rosenman, Artie Cornfield, and Mike Lane are loaded with the man's weapon, money. They all decided to invest their bucks into building a recording studio for rock musicians right here in Woodstock, New York.
I didn't come for the music, okay? I came to unite with everyone and stick to the man. We want our peace and harmony. The government isn't giving us what we want. Woodstock is like a big protest, while at the same time we can enjoy ourselves and relax. It's a beautiful thing, man.
We are all family here. It's a big melting pot of love, you know? We all come here for the same reasons. Listen to the musical soul of our favorite bands. Live with the delight of nature and join together so the man can't bring us down. We all love each other and just want peace and harmony, you know?
The music was a blessing. It spoke to all of us, right here, in the heart. I learned life lessons, man. The music filled my brain with knowledge, and it filled my heart with the teachings of peace and love. I heard the melodious, harmonious harmonies from Janis Joplin and the Grateful Dead. Knowledge.
This is exactly what I wanted, man. We got our attention from the news and awareness from the nation. I'm speaking to all Americans out there, somewhere over the rainbow. If you want to stick it to the man, join the family. We have been discovered, and we want our peace and respect.
It's alright.
The hippies were against any form of violence, even if the violence was for a cause they supported. For example, they encouraged the civil rights movement. However, riots regarding civil rights were discouraged for all hippies.
The recent passing of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 had its struggles over the years. This act admonished de jure discrimination, which meant that, legally, people could not discriminate others based off of race.
One of the biggest riots that occurred in 1968 was in the heart of our nation, our capital, Washington, D.C.
The riot started after a crowd had formed outside a drugstore. The group of people threw a rock into a window and consequently started the riot.
During this destructive time, there were 10 deaths, 7 of which were directly from violence. There were more than 7,600 arrests, and most of which were for looting.
Police and troops swarmed the area. After the riot was finished, there were more than $13 million in damage from the 1,200 fires.
The violent riots that arose were tragic for all.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
Besides the riots, there were other downfalls of the era. The Vietnam veterans had trouble readjusting to the life at home, both emotionally and physically. Many soldiers blamed anti-war efforts for the indifference they faced from the people at home.
Many soldiers who enlisted were of lower in socio-economic class. Other soldiers were drafted and forced into the military.
When returning home, soldiers got post-traumatic stress syndrome, which gives the soldier depression, guilt, flashbacks, mood swings, nightmares, angry outbursts, paranoia, and anxiety.
The government did not recognize these symptoms until 1979, and the hospitals did a poor job at treating the soldiers' mental and physical problems.
About 800,000 soldiers were diagnosed with post-traumatic stress syndrome, and some who had it were not diagnosed.
The amount of suicides of the returning veterans were equally as great as the 58,000 who died in battle. Let's take a look at an interview with a veteran that took place after he finished his tour in Vietnam.
Hello, America. I'm Jennifer Eppington, and we are here today to meet up with Lieutenant Dan Taylor, a highly decorated war veteran coming home from Vietnam. He's kindly asked us for some airtime to express his experience. Good afternoon to you, sir. Okay. So, how does it feel to come back home after your long and harsh tour? So, if you don't mind sharing or speaking at all, what were the biggest encounters you faced while in Vietnam? Sir, would you like to talk sometime?
May I? If you would shut up for less than 10 seconds, I would. Thank you. Now I'll answer your initial question. Go on, ask it.
Okay. So, how does it feel to come back home after your long and harsh tour?
Well, to be honest, it's the worst experience I've ever been through. At times, I think being back home is worse than fighting back in Vietnam. When I got off my plane ride, I was harassed by a hippie woman fighting against the war in Vietnam. She was calling me all sorts of names. Baby killer, psycho, and a warmongo. I don't even know what a warmongo is! I was about to remind her I was fighting for her country, and if I wasn't there, she wouldn't be able to have the freedom to harass me. Boy, I'm sure you could tell I was about to kick her ass. The day I came back, I could tell people were uncomfortable around me. I mean, look at you. What is wrong with you? And this? What is this? Are you trying to put me in my natural habitat? I may have been in Vietnam for 2 years, but I was raised in Ohio. I'm an American. I may be wearing my uniform, but I don't need to be in a camouflage background to be comfortable. I mean, I didn't even want to join the war. I don't know why we're fighting in Vietnam anyway. It's a civil war. No one knows who the enemy even is. One minute you could be chatting with a friendly South Vietnamese, and the next day you found out the same person stabbed your bunkmate and was a Charlie all along. Ridiculous. At least the World War II veterans had a specific enemy, but apparently we can't compare ourselves with these veterans. You know, our enemy is communism. It's invisible, okay? This type of fear has been destructive to our country for about 20 years already. Wow, you haven't talked for the entire interview. I was very surprised and, slightly impressed over your science. You can talk now,
And that wraps up our interview. Thank you for tuning in.
Despite the unfortunate events that the soldiers went through, this era had positive things as well. J.F. Kennedy wanted to land on the moon in 1961. However, this goal wasn't reached until July of 1969.
The mission was called Apollo 11, and it was to land 2 men on the moon and bring them back safely. On this mission was Neil Armstrong, Mike Collins, and Buzz Aldrin.
On July 20th, 1969, Neil Armstrong was the first person to land on the moon. The astronauts placed a U.S. flag on the moon and a sign saying, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace for all mankind." The astronauts returned home 4 days later.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We're on the air.
The events that occurred after the year of 1969 slowly decreased and put a close on the Vietnam era.
The Vietnam era truly was an exciting time period, and we hope this special edition of AEM was exciting as well.
I'm Barbara Watson.
And I'm Peggy Carter, signing off.
Thank you for joining us on the AEM, only on the History Channel.
As you can see, they were successful.
No, they weren't.
They weren't?
No. Okay. Okay, that was good.
Yeah, but you start.
What?
You start. Did you read it?
Oh!
Hey.
Okay, shut up, Megan. Besides the riots, there were other downfalls of the era. The Vietnam veterans had...
We're going, bye.
Okay, bye.
Now, when you were over there in Vietnam, how was it? What was the climate like? It must have been real different from here with all the snow. Yeah. I can talk about anything.
Talk about like Mr. Dudash.
Okay, so we have this teacher, and he teaches American history. American History 9. Now, this class is quite interesting, and this project is for that class. So, when we're doing this project, we've been doing it for quite a few hours now. It takes a lot of concentration. You have to be really smart. You gotta be on your game all the time. Oh yeah, no, don't you laugh. It's very serious.
Did you water this?
I did. I water it every day.
Right.
From
that's,
2 to
it's
4.
Really
2 to 4. I need to water it 3 times between 2 to 4.
Right. It's
Because
really artificial looking.
You know what? You need to check yourself before you go and say insensitive, heartless things. Hurtful things, I should say. You're a bucket dipper.
Woodstock is... Sunny!